The NFL Scouting Combine is upon us, and we're going to tell you what's most important for the Colts this week. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Jake Arthur. No Zach today. He's actually en route to Indy right now, so we're going to bring you guys a ton of coverage this week from the Combine, talk to some other media people, see kind of get the gauge on what the Colts are doing nationally from that perspective, talk to some players. Just kind of bring you the information that we're hearing from Indy. So make sure to hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. If you are not already, hopefully you already are, but we would love you guys to join us. Today, obviously, it's all about the Combine, what the Colts want to watch for at certain positions. Chris Ballard definitely has his types at each position. And then what the quarterbacks are doing, obviously, there's the big four. We've kind of got some developments on them. But first, a little Colts news for you. So the beginning of the week, some of the information we've all been waiting for, who are going to be some of these position coaches coming in for the Colts. So far, new offensive line coach being reported from Art Stapleton out there in New York. It's not Roy Istvan from the Eagles. So we got to check on Zach on that one. It is reportedly assistant offensive line coach Tony Sparano Jr., he's, of course, the son of Tony Sparano, the longtime legendary offensive line coach throughout the NFL. Sparano Jr. is only 36, but he's actually been coaching in the NFL since 2011, including each of the last 2 years with the Panthers and Giants. He's been an assistant O-line coach. He's actually been an assistant O-line coach for 6 years now. So that's, he's a bit experienced. Maybe not as experienced as some of the other guys that have been circled, but he's been there, done that so far. He's not been, sole offensive line coach before, but apparently they're going for a young guy. So he's actually not worked with new Colts head coach Shane Steichen before. So I'm just kind of looking at some connections. The Colts reported running backs coach is DeAndre Smith from the Giants. So perhaps Smith put in a good word and, Steichen took notice and liked what he saw. We don't know. We'll definitely make sure to ask Steichen about some of these coaching changes. If the Colts haven't announced those changes yet, they might be kind of tight-lipped and not acknowledge some of the things that have been reported, but we'll see there. Also, defensive coordinator Gus Bradley is staying on board. Another report on that one. That's not really a big shock. We've anticipated that one for a while. Bradley and Steichen go back to their days with the Chargers. They were reportedly close, had a great working relationship there. So that's exactly what we expected. So no big shocker there. So something Zach definitely had been mentioning on Twitter lately in relation to the Colts and the Combine. It's something I've worked on before. Zach's got his Build a Ballard series that he does every offseason. So Colts GM Chris Ballard, like I said earlier, he has types that he likes at each position group. So we've kind of circled some of the main ones here. But just to provide a background, really, they go for guys with size and athleticism pretty much above all else. If you're getting drafted by Chris Ballard in the Colts, you're going to have some sort of unique trait, whether that's your size, explosiveness, athleticism, whatever it is. Last year's class was like historically athletic. Their relative athletic scores, their RASs were all like at least 9.3 or 9.4 or something. Just a really phenomenally athletic class. So Zach kind of broke a lot of this down. The average RAS score of all of Ballard's draft picks with the Colts has been 8.43, which is considered elite. Again, that Valencia size and athleticism. Among Ballard's round 1, 2, and 3 picks, that average kicks up to 9.09. So if you're going to get picked early by the Colts, you got to have great athletic scores and at least adequate size to go with it. He's only drafted 2 players with a poor RAS ranking, and he's done 31 with an elite level. That's 58%. For this exercise, Zach excluded Shaquille Leonard, who probably would have tested in the elite level. I certainly got the height for it as well, but he got hurt early in his combine workout, which kind of kicked out his scores. He went through his testing, but his testing went really poorly and was really uncharacteristic of a guy of Leonard's athleticism, of course. As for a position like wide receiver, which is something that's always on the board with the Colts, and we could look to see them adjust again this year because, of course, you can never have too many receivers. You're getting a new quarterback. It's obviously going to be helpful. Ballard has never drafted a receiver that was under 5'11" or under 200 pounds. So keep an eye on that when looking at these receivers when you see them work out over the weekend. As for, common traits for them, height, weight, explosion. So they're going to have, 10-yard splits are going to be high. Vertical and broad jumps are going to be high as well. So keep an eye on that. As for cornerbacks, he's only drafted 1 with arms under 32 inches long. It was really one reason he wasn't in love with Kenny Moore when he got there was because of I think he's 5'10", 5'9" or something, but Kenny's got abnormally long arms, which makes up for it. So that arm length contributes to overall length. They want him to be tall, but they have to be able to, bat away passes against taller receivers. They've also got to have great size and physicality. If you look at any cornerback that the Colts have drafted, maybe some of the guys, the free agents have been a little different, but any of the guys they've drafted, they all like to tackle. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers is 5'10", 180, and he's out there and he's one of, their highest effort tacklers out there. So regardless of size, you're going to have to tackle and be a little physical if you're going to be a corner that's taken by the Colts. All of the edge defenders have a vertical of at least 34 inches, and their arms have been at least 33 inches. So length, explosiveness, and size there. Ballard really likes raw athletic guys that he can just sit there at the edge and kind of develop them and see what they're able to learn and pick up from the coaches. It hasn't always had a great hit rate, but it looks like Kwity Paye and Dayo Odengbo are certainly trending in the right direction there. As for offensive linemen, really the most common trait there is they've got to have freak athleticism. They've got to test really well athletically, and they often don't bring in guys who don't hit all the size measurements. Their arms have to be, 33 inches or 32, 33 inches. They have to have a nice blend of size and weight. Bernhard Raimann was kind of an outlier to that because his arms were just a tick lower than what you would want for an offensive tackle, but it is what it is. It's not a huge detriment to him so far. So again, just to kind of go over that, wide receivers, height, weight, explosion, you're going to look for those guys. If you're seeing a receiver out there running late 4.5s, 4.6s, probably not going to happen. Guys under 5'10" or so, probably not going to happen. Cornerbacks is kind of the same. They've got to have that size and length. The speed isn't as big of a deal because I think they want to rely on them more being physical at the point of attack with receivers, so they don't have to have that catch-up speed as much. And then again, defensive line and offensive line, just athleticism, out the wazoo, basically. But before we put a bow on things today, we want to talk to you guys about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. The midway point of the NBA season is here and past. All-Star break is gone. And now's the perfect time to download the FanDuel app because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores and even three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So with the draft, it kind of feels like nothing else matters until the quarterback is taken with this first pick. So if we're talking about some Colts news, this is kind of Colts related. It came out on Monday morning that the Chicago Bears, who hold the number 1 pick in the draft, they've taken a lot of calls apparently for that first overall pick. The Colts pick in the top 5. They need a quarterback, and no one seems to know, there's just varying degrees of who's the top quarterback. I would, it would be interesting to see if there were 3 or 4 teams that had the same top 2, top 3 quarterbacks. Even you could make a strong argument for each of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. I could see why any team might not like some of those guys, or why they might be in love with them. So maybe the Colts are one of those teams that have been calling to try and get up to number 1, or at least see what it might cost. I think a lot of us have been kind of projecting that it might take a Colts player to be involved in that mix if the Colts are going to move up, because of that familiarity with Matt Eberflus. You've got guys like Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner, Shaquille Leonard. How realistic it is that the Colts would want to move any of those guys, I don't know. Michael Pittman is another name that's been involved. The Bears never really seem to have a good full stacked receiving core. So keep an eye on that. That's at least something we're going to want to watch, because the Combine is probably the NFL event on the calendar that has the most wheeling and dealing going with it. There's agents are in town. There's a lot of players there. All team personnel are there. There's a lot of communicating, a lot of deals done, unofficially done during the Combine. So we'll keep an eye on that one there. As for these quarterbacks, we were starting to learn more about what some of these guys are or aren't going to do here in Indy during the Combine. So Bryce Young, who's probably most people's top quarterback, he's not going to work out, which if you've been watching us, we kind of anticipated that, because his biggest question mark is his size, right? So he's probably going to want to put more weight on. And if he tries to show up weighing 200 pounds or so, a lot of that's going to be water weight, and it's probably not going to lead to the best workout possible. So let's just say he comes to Indy, he meets with teams, doesn't work out, but he sticks to his measurables. And then whenever he has his pro day in the next month or so, he can get back to his more natural weight and then, work out thin and then post better scores. So that does make sense if he decides to stick to those measurements he had in Indy, not measure again at his pro day, but does work out. That makes a lot of sense. It looks like CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson, they're all going to work out. That makes sense for all those guys. Stroud, he's always had a thing about his athleticism. Getting this plugged in. So Stroud's always had a thing about athleticism. And up until that Georgia game, a lot of people questioned it. But I mean, after that, he clearly showed that he could do it. So if he goes out there and performs really well athletically, I think that'll answer a lot of people's questions about him. Anthony Richardson, people expect him to work out well. But if he has some sort of otherworldly workout, then it's going to be really hard to ignore, and it could lock him into the top 10. We'll see. Will Levis as well, athletic guy. If he can establish that he's really athletic, or even outperform what some people think he's going to do, that could lock him in, make teams feel a little better about him. Because, I mean, his tape is there. He was kind of a wildcat quarterback when he was at Penn State before transferring to Kentucky. So, I mean, there's not much questions about his athleticism there. Plus, he's got a really live arm. Same thing for Anthony Richardson. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's a lot of things to watch out for from a Colts perspective this week at the Combine. Zach and I are going to prepare for the week tonight. He's going to get into town Monday. Then we're going to kind of get our ducks in a row, get prepared for the week so we can make sure to bring you guys the best content possible. So no show tomorrow. But we'll be back with you on Wednesday. Follow at least no show tomorrow morning. If something comes up, we definitely might feel compelled to give you something in the afternoon. So go ahead and follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also love your ratings and reviews. That helps us get up the charts there. And thank you again for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into the sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see you guys this week.